Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm not really sure who's fronting right now, but that's okay. Um, Today I wanted to talk about a topic that I thought I didn't really see brought up at all, at least not on YouTube. So, I wanted to talk about early developmental trauma and dissociative disorders. I think I might want to dive a little bit deeper into this when I become more informed, but for right now, I just wanted to share my thoughts about it. So recently, I came to the conclusion about why it was so challenging for me to recognize I had OSDD or, type of dissociative disorder. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that uh, my ability to have emotional metacognition or that sort of ability to emotionally scan my thoughts was largely hindered by early developmental trauma. And I know that probably isn't something that all people with OSDD or DID struggle with, but I imagine for a lot of people it is. And I think that when I look back and I had or I saw things that might have been indicative of having OSDD or DID type symptoms, I sort of look at, I think that the inability to sort of read it for what it was in part due to the early developmental trauma, particularly reading other people, their intent, being able to conceptualize their experience relative to mine, or read the situation, for lack of a better word. And I think a big reason why this poses such a challenge for people with dissociative disorders is that it's really expecting us to be in touch with the part of ourselves that deliberately split off as a product of trauma, and to have that sort of internal wherewithal to recognize that when people on the outside aren't going to recognize that. They're just going to see the acting out. I personally have never come across a therapist or someone who is informed about psychology who has really presented this sort of publicly as more of a mental health issue. I think a bit kind of like any other mental health issue, the people will talk about the symptoms, sort of what they see on a surface level, but the idea that something could be early developmental trauma is not something that's sort of brought up through the lens of something that needs to be healed or needs to be repaired. And so I imagine maybe for a lot of therapists that's something that happens behind closed doors, but I think it needs to be a little bit more available, particularly to people who are kind of left in the dark about their mental health. And so the reason that I say this is that I think there's this commonly held belief that particularly the way that we interact with each other, or the way that consciousness develops within people or exists within people, is something that everyone can take for granted, and something that comes naturally to everyone, and if it isn't there, it's a deliberate choice, or it's something that that individual chooses to do, or they know better but they're choosing to be foolish, rather than this is a mental or social or health issue and should be posed as such. I found some great references online that I'm going to share in the caption of this video, so please be sure to check that out. And so I have a few sniffles here, but I'm trying to make it through. And I think particularly the developmental trauma that I'm referencing here is the ability to have that sort of emotional attunement. And I think from an outside perspective, I can only imagine that people who suffer from the kind of early developmental trauma that I'm talking about, it kind of just looks like a person who doesn't really have wherewithal. It kind of looks like a person who is making a deliberate choice to act without wherewithal. But that attunement, that sort of emotional attunement with themselves, is something that is a product of trauma. And I think that for people like myself, and I know I've seen this in other people as well, but I know that this was a big issue for me for a long time. I think this is why it was so easy to focus on other people and to have empathy for other people, because that inner attunement just wasn't there, and it's taken a long time to develop. And I think, like anything that is meant to be learned early on or gained early on, if you're forced to do it as an adult, whether it be walking or whether it be gaining an emotional or social skill as an adult, it takes that much longer. And so, while it might seem like something subtle or something that many people can take for granted, I hope that in the future this is something I can help raise awareness toward. And I also don't want to leave out the fact that, like anything that is a mental health issue or a disability or something that is sort of seen as abnormal, there is definitely a lot of shame attached to it. There's a lot of shame in the fact that you're supposed to be an adult, but you have this mental health issue, but you have this developmental issue that everyone can presumably take for granted. And so I think that this will be really important to highlight and to disarm people who are struggling with this from, because I know that they see the results of it every day. I know what it is like to see that feedback and not know where it's coming from. So know that I see you. I hope that in the future this is something I can help raise awareness towards. But in the meantime, I look forward to speaking to you guys more here on my channel. And thank you for anyone who's listening. I hope that this was helpful to someone, or if there's anything you want to share, please put it in the comments. All right, thank you.